The message came at 9:17 on a Saturday morning. Please don't come tonight. We're keeping our anniversary dinner private. Just immediate family. I stared at those words for almost a full minute, then I read them again. Immediate family. I was my son's mother. For 29 years, I had been the woman he called when he was sick, broke, heartbroken, confused, or simply lonely. I had been there when he took his first steps, when he graduated college, when he called me from the side of the road after his first car broke down, and when he stood trembling at the altar with his hands shaking so badly, I had to squeeze them before he walked toward his bride. But apparently, 4 years into his marriage, I was no longer immediate family. The message was from my daughter-in-law, Lauren. I didn't answer. I simply put my phone face down on the kitchen counter and stood there in silence. What I didn't know was that 3 hours later, Lauren's mother would post a photograph online, and that single photograph would explain why I had been banned from my own son's anniversary dinner. It would also expose a lie that had been growing inside my family for months. My name is Diane Carter, and I was 61 years old when I learned that sometimes the most painful betrayal isn't being excluded. It's discovering that people had already decided what you deserved before they ever gave you a chance to defend yourself. That morning, I had actually been looking forward to the evening. It was my son Matthew and Lauren's 4th wedding anniversary. I had bought them a nice bottle of wine and a small, framed photograph from their wedding day. Nothing extravagant, just a picture I had found in an old box while cleaning my attic. In it, Matthew was laughing, not posing, not smiling for the camera, actually laughing. Lauren was looking at him with her hand over her mouth. I remembered that moment. I remembered thinking, they're going to be okay. I had believed it. I had spent years trying to be the kind of mother-in-law people joked about never having. I didn't drop by unannounced. I didn't criticize Lauren's cooking. I didn't interfere with their parenting decisions. When they bought their house outside Columbus, Ohio, I gave them the money I had saved for Matthew's wedding because they were struggling with the down payment. When their first daughter, Emma, was born, I stayed in a hotel for 3 nights because Lauren had mentioned she wanted privacy. I thought I was doing everything right. Apparently, I had been doing everything wrong. At 10:04 that morning, Matthew called. I almost didn't answer. "Hey, Mom." His voice sounded tired. "Hi, honey." There was a pause. "Lauren told you about tonight?" I looked at the phone. So she did. Another pause. "She thinks it's better if you don't come." I swallowed. "Does she?" "She's just trying to make the night less stressful." I almost laughed. "Matthew, it's your anniversary." "I know, and apparently I'm not invited." "Mom." "No. It's fine. It's not like that." "Then, what is it like?" Silence. That silence told me more than his words could have. Finally, he said, "She wants it to be just us, her parents, and her brother." I sat down at the kitchen table. "So her parents' immediate family?" "Mom, please. I'm not asking for a fight. I'm asking you a simple question." He sighed. "I don't want to argue about this. I don't either. Can we just let it go?" I looked at the framed photograph sitting beside me, Matthew and Lauren on their wedding day. I had planned to bring it to them that evening. "Sure," I said quietly. "I love you, Mom. I love you too." We hung up. I didn't cry. Not then. Instead, I wrapped the anniversary gift back up. Then I placed it inside the hall closet. I told myself it was fine. People change. Families changed. Marriages change. Maybe this was simply my turn to step back. But there was something about the message that bothered me. Not the dinner, not even the exclusion. The wording. Just immediate family. Lauren knew exactly what those words would do to me, and she had chosen them anyway. At 12:30, I went grocery shopping. I was pushing my cart through the produce section when my phone buzzed. A message from Lauren. "Thanks for understanding. We really want tonight to be peaceful." I stared at it. Peaceful. I typed, "Of course," then deleted it. I typed, "Enjoy your evening." Derated that too. Finally, I sent nothing. For the first time in years, I began wondering whether my silence had been part of the problem. Maybe I had allowed people to assume I would always understand, always forgive, Always help. Always be available. At 2:18, I got another message. This time from Matthew. Mom, please don't take tonight personally. I stared at those words. Don't take tonight personally. How exactly was I supposed to take it? As a scheduling conflict? As a weather issue? As a clerical error? I put my phone away. I went home. Around 4 o'clock, I made coffee and sat on my back porch. That was when I started remembering things I had tried very hard not to remember. The first time Lauren asked me for money, it had been 6 months after their wedding. She had called me crying. Diane, I don't know who else to ask. I had given them $3,000. Then there was the car repair. Then the daycare bill. Then the time Matthew had changed jobs and gone nearly 2 months without a paycheck. I never kept a record. I never asked for repayment. I told myself that was what family did. But there was one thing I had never told them. The money I had given them hadn't come from some endless savings account. It came from selling my mother's jewelry. My mother had died 2 years before Matthew married Lauren. She had left me a small collection of gold jewelry. Nothing extraordinary, but every piece had a memory attached to it. I sold most of it because Matthew needed help. I never told him I didn't want gratitude. I wanted my son to have a good life. That evening, at 6:41, I was washing a coffee mug when my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it. Then I saw the notification. Facebook. Lauren's mother, Patricia. I opened it, and everything inside me went still. Patricia had posted a photograph. The caption read, 4 years of love and the best family dinner. So grateful we could all celebrate together. The picture showed a long restaurant table. Matthew was there. Lauren was there. Patricia was there. Lauren's father, Richard, was there. Lauren's brother, Jason, was there. And sitting at the end of the table was someone I recognized immediately, my old friend, Nancy. I stared at the photograph. Nancy, my own neighbor, a woman who had known Matthew since he was 12. A woman who had spent Thanksgiving at my house. A woman who had once told me, Diane, you are the glue holding that family together. She was sitting there, laughing. I zoomed in. There were 6 wine glasses, 6 plates, 6 people. But then I noticed something else. On the table beside Matthew was the exact same framed photograph I had bought for their anniversary. The photograph from their wedding. My photograph. I zoomed in again. It was unmistakable. I had wrapped that frame in blue paper. Lauren had taken it. She had somehow gotten it before the dinner. My hands started shaking. Then I saw the comments. Beautiful family. Happy anniversary. What a wonderful night. Such a special celebration. And then, Patricia had replied to one comment. Couldn't imagine celebrating without the people who truly support them. I stopped breathing for a second. The words weren't subtle anymore. They were deliberate. I closed Facebook, then opened it again. I looked at the photograph one more time. There was something wrong. Something I couldn't explain. Why was my gift there? And why was Nancy there? I called her. She answered on the 4th ring. Diane? Are you at dinner with Matthew and Lauren? Silence. Then she said, Oh God, my stomach dropped. What? I thought they told you. Told me what? Another pause. Diane, I'm so sorry. Just tell me. Nancy exhaled. Lauren invited me 2 weeks ago. Why? I don't know. Why would she invite you? I thought it was because she wanted me to help with something. What something? She asked me to bring the photo. I gripped the phone tighter. What photo? The wedding photo. My voice went cold. The one I bought? Yes. Why? I don't know, Diane. Then why did you bring it? Because she told me it was a surprise for Matthew. I closed my eyes. A surprise. For Matthew. And you believed her? Of course I did. I wasn't angry at Nancy. Not really. She sounded embarrassed. Then she said something that changed everything. Diane, there's something else. What? Before dinner, Lauren asked me to stay outside with her for a minute. What did she say? She said you weren't coming because you had become difficult. My chest tightened. Difficult? She said you had been putting pressure on Matthew. She said you were upset about the house. What house? Silence. I stood up. What house, Nancy? She said you wanted Matthew to sell their house and move closer to you. I almost laughed. I've never said that. I know. Then why would she say it? I don't know. There was another pause. Then Nancy whispered, Diane, I think something is going on. I looked at the photograph again. Apparently, that night I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about the house, their house, the one they had bought 3 years earlier. I remembered helping them choose it. I remembered standing in the unfinished kitchen while Matthew talked about starting a family. Lauren had hated the house at first. She had said the kitchen was too small, the backyard wasn't private enough, the neighborhood was too far from her parents. But they bought it anyway. And I had contributed $18,000 toward the down payment. Again, I had never asked for anything in return. But 6 months earlier, Matthew had called me and said something strange. Mom, if anything happens with the house, I need you to know you're protected. I had asked what he meant. He said, nothing, just something I wanted to tell you. I thought it was odd. I didn't think about it again. Until now. The next morning, I drove to Matthew's house. I didn't intend to confront anyone. I simply wanted answers. When I pulled into the driveway, Lauren's SUV was gone. Matthew's truck was there. I knocked. He opened the door. His face changed when he saw me. Mom, I need to talk to you. He stepped outside and closed the door behind him. What happened? I held out my phone. Why did your mother-in-law post this? He looked at the photograph. His face went pale. Mom, don't call me mom like that. Just tell me the truth. He rubbed his forehead. I didn't know she was posting it. That's not what I asked. He looked away. Why was Nancy there? I don't know. Why was my gift there? I don't know. Why did Lauren tell me I couldn't come? He was silent. Matthew. Finally, he said, Lauren thinks you're trying to control us. I stared at him. How? She says you've been asking about our finances. I asked once how you were doing. You've asked about the mortgage. Because you told me you were struggling. You've offered money. Because you were struggling. He looked frustrated. Mom, she feels like every time something goes wrong, you remind us that you helped. I stepped back. I have never reminded you. I know. Then why are you letting her say this? He didn't answer. That hurt more than anything else. Then I asked, is there something wrong with the house? He looked at me sharply. What, the house? Why? Because you told me months ago that if anything happened, I was protected. His face changed again. This time, I knew there was something. Matthew. He sat on the porch step. Mom, I need to tell you something. I sat beside him. He stared at his hands. Lauren wants to sell the house. Okay, she wants to move closer to her parents. Okay, she says it's too expensive. I waited, but there's a problem. What problem? He looked at me. The mortgage is behind. I felt my stomach drop. How far? 4 months. I stared at him. 4 months? He nodded. Why didn't you tell me? Because I thought I could fix it. How? Extra work. Selling some things. Matthew. I know. I looked at him. Does Lauren know? Yes. And her parents? Yes. Then why did she tell people I was trying to control the house? He didn't answer. That was when I realized the house wasn't the real issue. Money was. I asked quietly, how much do you owe? He looked away. About $14,000. I closed my eyes. Matthew. I know. I could help. No. Why? Because Lauren said she doesn't want your money. I looked at him. Yet she used the $18,000 I gave you for the down payment. He looked ashamed. Mom. No. I'm not angry about the money. I stood. I'm angry because you allowed your wife to turn me into the villain for something I never did. He looked up at me. I didn't know what to do. I nodded. That's the problem. I left for the first time in my life. I didn't hug my son goodbye. That afternoon, I went through my files. I found the bank records, the transfer for the down payment, the repair bills, the daycare payments, the money I had sent when Matthew was unemployed. Not because I wanted ammunition, because I needed to know the truth myself. Then I found something I had forgotten, a handwritten note from Matthew. It was dated 3 years earlier. Mom, I don't know how I'll ever repay you. You saved us. I sat there holding that piece of paper and I cried, not because of the money, because my son had once understood exactly what I had done for him. Somewhere along the way, he had forgotten, or maybe someone had convinced him to. That evening, I called an attorney, not to sue my son, not to punish Lauren. I simply needed to understand my legal position. I showed him the documents. He looked through them carefully. Then he asked, "Did you have an agreement about the down payment?" "No." "Any written agreement?" "No." He nodded. "Then legally, it was a gift." I expected that. Then he pointed to something else. "This account. What about it?" "You still have your name on the property lien." I frowned. "What lien?" He turned the document toward me. I stared. Years earlier, when I helped with the down payment, the lender had required additional documentation because of the family contribution. My name had remained attached to a small secured interest. I had completely forgotten about it. The attorney explained it carefully. I wasn't the owner of the house, but if the property was sold, the amount secured under the agreement would have to be resolved before the remaining proceeds were distributed. It wasn't a fortune. It wasn't a magic loophole, but it was enough to matter, especially because Matthew and Lauren were already behind on the mortgage. I left the attorney's office with one thought. I wasn't going to use the document to hurt my son, but I wasn't going to let anyone erase the truth either. 2 days later, Matthew called. "Mom?" "Yes." "Can we talk? We're talking." "I mean in person." I agreed. He came to my house alone. He looked exhausted. He sat at my kitchen table. "Lauren wants me to ask you something." I waited. "She wants you to sign something." "What?" "A release." I stared at him. "For the house." My heart sank. "So she can sell it." "Yes." "And remove my secured interest." "Yes." "Does she know about the mortgage arrears?" "Yes, and she still wants to sell. She says her parents will help us with the next house." I understood. That was the missing piece. Lauren wasn't simply trying to move. Her parents had a plan. Sell the house. Use whatever equity remained, move closer to them, and if my interest in the property interfered, make me look unreasonable. I asked Matthew, "Did her parents tell you they would help?" He nodded. "How much?" "I don't know." "Did they put it in writing?" "No." "Then don't sign anything." He looked confused. "Why?" "Because if you sign something you don't understand, you may lose the only protection you have." He stared at me. "You think they're trying to take the house? I think you need independent advice before you sign anything." He was silent. Then he said, "Lauren says you're trying to control our marriage." I looked at my son. "No, Matthew." I pointed toward the door. "I'm trying to stop you from making a decision because you're scared." His eyes filled. For a moment, he looked like the little boy who used to sit at my kitchen table after school. Then he whispered, "I don't know who to trust anymore." I answered honestly. "Start by trusting the documents." That was the moment everything began to unravel. Matthew hired his own attorney, not mine. His own. 2 days later, he learned that the proposed sale would leave them with far less money than Lauren's parents had promised. Then another problem surfaced. The mortgage lender had already sent a formal notice regarding the missed payments. The house couldn't simply be sold and split like everyone had imagined. There were liens, there were penalties, there were closing costs, and my secured interest was valid. Lauren was furious. She called me. "You've been planning this." I stayed calm. "Planning what?" "To take our house." "I don't want your house." "You knew about the lien." I didn't remember it until my attorney found it. "You're doing this because you're jealous." I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Jealous of what?" "You've never accepted that Matthew chose me." I sat silently. Then I said, "Lauren, I never competed with you. You expect me to believe that?" "Yes, you've always wanted him to yourself." "No, you think you're his real family." I looked at the phone, then I said something I had never said before. "I think I am his mother." Silence. "That doesn't give me ownership of him." Another silence. "And it never gave you permission to erase me." She hung up. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. The next morning, Patricia posted another photograph. This one wasn't from the anniversary. It was a picture of Lauren and Matthew standing in front of a real estate sign. The caption said, "New beginnings. Sometimes you have to let go of people who don't want to see you happy." My stomach tightened. The comments started immediately. People who didn't know the story were congratulating them. I didn't respond. Then Nancy called. "Diane, don't say anything online." I wasn't going to. "There's more." "What?" She showed me the messages. "What messages?" "Lauren has been telling people you've been harassing them." My heart sank. "What?" "She has screenshots." "Of what messages you supposedly sent?" I froze. I had barely messaged her in months. I opened my phone. There were messages in my account. Moss I hadn't written. Moss saying things like, "You're destroying my son's life. You'll regret what you're doing. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what kind of person you are." My blood ran cold. Someone had access to my account. I checked the login history. There was an unfamiliar device, a laptop location, Columbus. I changed my password immediately. Then I called Matthew. He didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. Finally, I sent one message. "Check your wife's devices. Someone has been accessing my account." 20 minutes later, he called. "Mom." His voice sounded different. "What happened?" "I found something." "What?" I checked the family laptop. My heart pounded. "And there were saved screenshots of my messages." "Yes." "Matthew." "I didn't send this." "I know." "How?" "Because the timestamps don't match." I sat down. "What do you mean?" "The screenshots were edited. There was silence between us." Then Matthew said, "Mom, I'm sorry." I closed my eyes. "For what?" "For not believing you." Those 5 words hurt more than the entire week. Not because they fixed anything, but because they finally admitted that something had been wrong. The truth came out slowly after that. Lauren had been struggling financially for months. Her mother had encouraged her to move closer to them. Her parents had offered to help with a new home. But they wanted Matthew and Lauren to sell their current property first. The problem was the mortgage, and my secured interest made the numbers worse. Lauren panicked. Instead of telling Matthew the full situation, she created a story in which I was the obstacle. Then she started gathering evidence to support that story. The anniversary dinner had been part of it. It wasn't simply a celebration. It was a staged photograph, a public statement, a way to show everyone that the family was united without me. And the framed wedding photograph I had given them, Lauren had asked Nancy to bring it because she wanted Matthew to believe I had willingly given it to them despite being excluded. But Patricia's post accidentally revealed something Lauren hadn't intended. The photograph in the frame had been taken from my house before the dinner. Nancy hadn't realized that. Neither had Patricia. And when I confronted Matthew, he finally started looking closely at everything. The lies began collapsing. But there was still one thing left: the anniversary dinner, the place where all of this had started. 3 weeks later, Matthew asked me to meet him at the same restaurant. I almost refused. Then I went. He was sitting alone at a table. No Lauren, no Patricia, no one else, just my son. He stood when I walked in. "Mom." I sat down. He looked nervous. "I owe you an apology." I didn't answer. "I should have protected you." "You should have protected the truth." He nodded. "I know." He reached into a folder. Inside were documents, the mortgage statements, the property records, the account history, and printed copies of the messages Lauren had sent from my account. "I gave everything to the attorney," he said. "What happens now? We're selling the house." I looked at him. "Because you want to." "Yes." "And Lauren?" "She moved in with her parents temporarily." I nodded. He looked down. "We're separated." That surprised me, not because I wanted it, but because 4 years earlier, I had watched him marry her believing they were forever. "I don't know what's going to happen," he said. "That's okay." He looked at me. "You're not angry?" "I am." He lowered his head. "But I'm not going to spend the rest of my life being angry." He swallowed. "I thought you would cut me off." I thought about it. His eyes lifted. But then I realized something. "What?" "You weren't the son I raised when you stopped defending me." He looked crushed. "I know. And you weren't the man I raised when you let someone else tell you what I had done." His eyes filled. I was scared. I know. I thought if I stood up to Lauren, I'd lose my marriage. I reached across the table, and by staying silent, you almost lost your mother. He nodded. We sat quietly. Then he pushed the folder toward me. "There's one more thing." I opened it. It was the release document, already signed by Matthew, not by me. He had agreed to honor my secured interest from the sale. Not because I demanded it, because he finally understood what it represented. Not greed, not control. A promise. The same promise I had made when I sold my mother's jewelry to help him buy that house. He said, "I'm going to pay you back." I shook my head. "You don't owe me for being your mother." "I know." He looked at me. "But I owe you for the way I treated you." That time I hugged him. Not because everything was fixed. It wasn't. Trust doesn't come back because someone says sorry. But sometimes an apology is the first brick in rebuilding something that has been damaged. Months later, the house sold. After the mortgage, expenses, and other obligations were settled, my secured amount was returned to me. Matthew used the rest to start over. Lauren eventually contacted me. She apologized. It wasn't dramatic. There were no tears or begging, just a quiet phone call. She admitted she had been overwhelmed. She admitted she had lied. She admitted she had convinced herself that I was the reason her marriage was failing because it was easier than admitting she and Matthew had financial problems they had ignored. I listened. Then I said, "I forgive you." She sounded surprised, "But I don't trust you yet." She understood, and that was enough. A year after the anniversary dinner, Matthew invited me to his housewarming. He had rented a small townhouse, nothing fancy, no huge kitchen, no perfect backyard, no expensive furniture, just a clean little place where he could start rebuilding his life. When I arrived, he handed me a small box. I opened it. Inside was the framed wedding photograph, the same one from the anniversary dinner. I looked at him. "I thought you kept this." "I did." "Why are you giving it back?" He smiled sadly. "Because it belongs to you." I looked at the photograph. Matthew and Lauren were laughing. 4 years earlier, I had thought that photograph represented a perfect beginning. Now I saw something different. It represented a moment before all the pretending started. I handed it back. "Keep it." He looked surprised. "Are you sure?" "Yes. Why?" "Because I don't want to remember your wedding as the night everything went wrong." I smiled. "I'd rather remember it as the night you were happy." He hugged me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe around my son again. A few weeks later, Patricia deleted the original anniversary photograph. I never asked her to. I never commented. She simply removed it, but someone had already saved it. The internet is like that. Things disappear from a page, but they don't always disappear from memory. I still have the screenshot, not because I enjoy looking at it. I keep it because it reminds me of something I had to learn the hard way. Being excluded from a table doesn't always mean you've lost your place in a family. Sometimes it means you've finally been shown where you truly stand. And when someone deliberately pushes you outside the circle, you don't always have to fight your way back in. Sometimes you step away. You stop explaining. You stop paying for people who insult you. You stop begging to be included. And you let the truth speak for itself. My daughter-in-law thought banning me from an anniversary dinner would make me feel small. For a few days, it did. But that photograph her mother posted gave me something far more valuable than an invitation. It gave me the truth. And once I had the truth, I didn't need revenge. I needed boundaries. My son didn't need a mother who would keep rescuing him from every mistake. He needed one who loved him enough to let him face the consequences of his choices. And I didn't need to prove that I belonged in my family's life. I simply needed to remember that my worth was never decided by who saved me a seat at the table. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do after being pushed away is stop chasing the people who pushed you. Not because you stopped loving them, but because you finally learned that love without respect is not a family. It's a sacrifice, and I had sacrificed enough.